Hello, I'm Michael Cantrell, and you are listening to the Prison Officer Podcast, a place to have a conversation about the forgotten cops that work in this country's jails, prisons, and correctional centers. A place for me to try to make sense of a career spent working inside the fence with some of the greatest people that nobody sees or recognizes for the important job they do to keep this world safe. If you love this podcast, hit the follow button, or better yet, share with your family, friends, or coworkers. In more than 28 years of corrections, I have used or supervised Pepperball hundreds of times. Now, as a master instructor for Pepperball, I teach others about the versatility and effectiveness of the Pepperball system. From cell extractions to disturbances on the rec yard, Pepperball is the first option in my correctional toolbox. With ranges up to 150 feet and hoppers that can hold 160 rounds, Pepperball is perfect for controlling large crowds or group disturbances on your yard. Pepperball allows for non-lethal direct impact to control inmates who refuse to comply with lawful orders, and area saturation allows you to achieve buffer zones between groups, or use it for area denial to keep inmates away from security equipment and other accessible areas. To learn more about Pepperball, go to www.pepperball.com or click the link below in this show's information guide. Pepperball is the safer option first. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. My name is Mike Cantrell, and today I've got Justin Stevens from Desert Waters, which is a company that cares about corrections wellness, correctional officer wellness, and we're gonna meet Justin and we're gonna talk about that. Before I bring him on, let me introduce him a little bit. Justin Stevens, before his employment with Desert Waters, Justin was employed for 17 years by the California Department of Corrections. During this time, he worked at the Division of Juvenile Justice and the Division of Adult Institutions in both high security, medium, and low security prisons. He promoted to lieutenant, at which position he served for 11 years. During his career at CDCR, he had the opportunity to train staff for 15 years, 6 of which were as an in-service training manager. Held certifications in use of force, alarm response, communication, de-escalation, and master training for trainers. Additionally, he spent years assisting in the development of leadership and supervision courses. His passion to train has always been to keep staff safer and healthier in the corrections environment. That is why he taught Desert Waters course, and we'll talk more about this. The name of it is From Corrections Fatigue to Fulfillment. He taught that for 2 years as a certified instructor while at CDCR. In addition to training, Justin served as a local peer support team for 6 years. And Justin and his wife Vanessa are blessed with 4 children and live on a family farm in Tennessee. That about cover it, Justin?
That's about my life in a nutshell.
Well, welcome to the Prison Officer Podcast. I know it's taken us a couple of tries. I was sick last time. I think you've got a couple of little ones sick right now.
I got those 4 little blessings running around sick right now. So,
yeah, that's tough. There's been crud going around the country right now. So,
yep,
everybody's got a little bit of it. So I always start these off the same way. I want to learn about you. I know the listeners want to learn about you. So
right. Tell
me where you grew up. And
well, I grew up in a town called San Luis Obispo, California, which is has zero gang activity. It's by the beach, like everyone just surfs, and there's a college town there. So if people do get in trouble, it's from drinking, not from anything else. So naturally, I wound up in corrections. It's what every kid wants to be. No, actually, I wanted to get into law enforcement. I became a California Highway Patrol Explorer when I was about 18. And okay. I did that because I was really fast at running, and they needed a 5K runner for their little activities they do so that they could win some extra points. So I did that on the guise of I'll find out where all the CHP hide, and I won't get any tickets in my Acura Integra. So, and you got to keep in mind, Fast and Furious had just come out, so my Acura Integra was ready to go, and I didn't want to get any more tickets. So I did that, and I was like, you know what, I like this cop thing. I was in school at the time to be a pharmacist, and I just couldn't see myself counting pills. And so I was like, I want to do this cop thing. So
you decided to count inmates.
Well, no. Yeah, it's count. Either way, you're counting indoors,
Sure.
I don't know what's more dangerous, pharmaceuticals or inmates.
Absolutely.
I think that's for another podcast, though.
Inmates on pharmaceuticals.
But yeah, I applied for everything, and in California there was a budget crisis like there always is in 2005, so I couldn't get hired anywhere. I applied like every small town where I was at, and they wanted us to pay for our own academy, which I couldn't do. And then I applied for LAPD, which is just dumb, like looking back on it. Like talk about dangerous.
Yeah.
And so I applied for adult corrections, and I got a phone call one day from the Youth Authority, California Youth Authority, and they said, "Hey, we pulled your application from the adult side. Would you like a job here?" And I was like, "What does it pay?" They said the same. Okay, I'd never heard of the Youth Authority, and it was only about 20 minutes from my house, and so I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." So I went to the academy like 4 weeks later, and did the Youth Authority for about 3 years, 3.5 years until we closed down. Because I mean, if you're in corrections, juvenile system goes up and down depending on where they want to house them,
Right.
what department they're part of. So from there, I went to the adult side, and I used my time at the juvenile side to promote to sergeant. At about 3.5 years, I promoted to a sergeant at a high security prison.
Okay.
Not knowing adult corrections, dumbest thing I've ever done. I couldn't tell you. I didn't know the processes. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know the culture of the prison. Like, it was just dumb. And I went one day. I had just bid into a yard spot,
Right.
and it was supposed to take effect on Monday. Well, I ended up promoting on that Monday. And so I had kicked out the person that was there before because I had more seniority. And then I became the sergeant. And on that yard, it wasn't a good introduction to the staff. And luckily, I had a lieutenant that kind of took me under his wings, and he saved me. And
Yeah.
he taught me pretty much everything. He taught me how to be a lieutenant after he taught me how to be a sergeant. And I worked for him for about three to 4 years until I promoted to lieutenant.
Nice.
Switched prisons, went medium security, which is like really nice compared to working high security. I worked there for 11 years. That's where I did 6 years of training manager. It really just took a focus. I make it sound real rosy, but that time from sergeant to lieutenant, my personal life went through hell. And I ended up going through a divorce, having a baby, not with the person that I went through a divorce with. And then I got married. Real backwards.
That's a lot of stress.
Cycle. But we see that, right, in corrections. I mean, that's like, oh, yeah, that happened yesterday to Johnny down the street. And so my lieutenant introduction to being a lieutenant was very rough because I had no focus on my job, and I self-proclaimed I was really good at it, but I just wasn't focused. I couldn't run a yard. I was kind of floating around in a relief position, had no buy-in. And then luckily I was able to turn things around. I met my wife in prison, is what I like to tell everybody. She was a nurse out there, and I turned my life around and really got into training staff. And I found that was what, we always talk about, hey, I want to walk out of the gate safe. And as a sergeant, I wanted my staff to walk out of the gate safe. And that's what I always did. Like, I focused on the tactics of what we did. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, wait, especially after taking the corrections fatigue to fulfillment course, was like, wait a minute. Not only do we have to walk out of the gate safe, but we need to be safe on the outside. We need to be mentally safe. We need to be well. Okay, I walk out of the gate safe, but then I go drink a 30-pack when I get home. It's not really a good thing.
Right.
And so I really changed my focus around 2018 when I was training manager to just kind of focus on staff. Mm-hmm. And I really did that until the end. Unfortunately, my last year, I had some administrative changes, and I just did not get along with the new administration. Um, and so I took it upon myself to remove myself from the job before they removed me. And so I
Right.
went back to the line, and I worked the line my last year. It had so much fun. It
Yeah.
was getting back to like what prison work was all about, and had fun with the boys. Got to go out there and still do some training, but still interact with people and interact
Yeah.
with inmates. It was a
Do you feel
lot of
do you
fun.
feel like you were probably a better leader at that time when you went back because you had dealt with some of what you'd been dealing with, learned about some of that?
Way, way, way better.
Yeah.
I mean, night and day. Like, well, especially compared to when I was like
Sure.
a total screw up.
Less focused on yourself and more focused back on the
Exactly.
staff now. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I'm able to point out where people are messing up, and so many times, I mean, you have those officers that just are going to buck the system, but you have employees everywhere that are going to buck the system. They want the paycheck, they don't want to do the work. But then you have people who are truly going through something and who are truly going, I mean, we have life outside of work. They're going through a fight with their spouse, and then they have to come in and they have to manage 200 inmates who don't want to listen to them. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And so it really was an eye-opening experience to come out back to the line and be like, oh, like it's almost like I have the playbook now. I could see what's going on. That was nice. Unfortunately, the last year my career came to an end. I got medically retired. I had, I got, so in California, the COVID vaccine was big. I don't know if it was where you were at, but they mandated it, but in the early time, they highly recommended it. Well, I got it. Then like 2 weeks later, I got a blood clot in my leg, and then
Mm.
my liver, my liver took a crap, and not from alcohol. It was
Wow.
from that. And so they ended up medically retiring me, which was a blessing because I got to go to Tennessee and live on 13 acres,
Sure.
but it it kind of messes up your mind a little bit where they take the career from you that you work, in California it was like I got to hit that 30-year mark, and it's like but I only hit 17. And
Yeah.
and to be taken out by something so stupid, it was like I always thought, an inmate would take me out, not a COVID vaccine. Um, I have some lasting effects from that, which made my work at Desert Water so nice because I can train, I could be around correction staff, but I don't have to do the job that I'm not allowed to do anymore.
Right. Right.
So
Even retirement, you feel like that job got taken from you. I did.
yeah,
I invested 30 years in it, and I retired, but still, when you walk out the door, you're so ingrained in this system and this life that my stripes were taken, or per se, I was a chief at the time, but you get your rank taken, you get all the people taken. So I can see that absolutely what you're talking about.
Well, and you see in retirement, people, you go from, I mean, on shift we had 250 officers. And so you go from possibly having connection with 250 people to now you're going home and you're making coffee with your wife that you haven't talked to because you've been doing overtime for the last 30 years. You don't even know who you're drinking coffee with, and that connection's gone now. And so you hear stories all the time about unfortunately the suicide rate's so huge, and even in retirement where you're like, oh, it's something great, they're finally out, but they weren't ready for it. Mentally they weren't prepared to go to their next. It's almost a battle because you're battling yourself.
Sure. Let me go back. I want to go back just a little bit because you said you worked juveniles and then you made that transition to adults. For people that don't know, what's the difference between the two? I mean, I know what it is, but it's
night and day. Like, so I violence wise, I always say that the kids were more violent, but they didn't play for keeps. So I
I
would
like
have
that.
I would have about 150 fights a month, because it was like street gang rival stuff. Um, and being a kid from a small town, I didn't know what gangs were. So,
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, they made me the gang investigator on my unit, which made absolute sense. But I really dove into it to learn it, and um, but yeah, you'd have this violence there that was just constant, but they weren't using weapons. I actually saw a couple times where people would have like a broom in their hand, where if someone came at me, I would swing the broom, and they dropped the broom to fight heads up. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then you go to prison, and it's like weapons. They're playing for keeps,
Sure.
and so the violence was much more violent, but it wasn't as much, and you got to lock them down more. The juveniles have so many rights, um, that you just, even if you have a riot, like we had open dorm setting, we'd have a riot, and all you do is say, "Hey, stay in your bed, don't do that again," and hopefully the next day we can have a normal program.
Yeah.
Um, where in the adult side, you're looking at, maybe a month lockdown before you come back to program. Um, yeah, I think the other difference is the respect. Um, you walk into an adult institution, there's a mutual respect that happens. It's a, it's not a normal respect like we see on the outside, but if you work in a prison, you know what the respect I'm talking about is. And so I can walk into an adult side prison and know that the inmates aren't going to talk crap to me unless I deserve it. Um, they may say some things on the tier or whatever, but they're not going to talk crap personally to you um, all the time. The juveniles, holy cow! If you have any insecurities, do not work at a juvenile prison. They'll find it. Um, I story. I don't know if I should tell all your listeners this one, but I jumpsuits. So I don't know if you had jumpsuit. We had a jumpsuit in California. You had to wear it at the academy. So of course I'm going to keep it because I'm cheap, and so I kept the jumpsuit going instead of wearing the two piece. Well, certain body types just don't fit in a jumpsuit. I was a runner.
Well,
I was skinny, but I was tall, and so you go to reach something up high, that jumpsuit's coming up with you, and so I had what people would call assets in the back end, just from my running. And so I walk into this juvenile institution and they call me J-Lo. And like I'm a 21-year-old kid getting into the department and they're 18 and they're calling me J-Lo. I felt like I walked back into high school and was getting, bullied again. And
yeah. When
so,
you're 30, that's funny. 21, that's
yeah,
getting in
21,
your mind.
that ruined me. But the funny thing is though, one of the kids that was, I mean, it went on for the whole 3 years that they said this. Even if I switched jumpsuits, it didn't matter. I was J-Lo. They, one of the kids ended up going to the high security prison that I was at. He beat me there. And he saw me on the yard as we were searching coming through. And talk about that respect issue. He looked at me and he was like, "Don't worry, I'm not gonna say it." And sure enough, he never said it while he was there. But at the youth authority, he would have been yelling it from across the quad.
I picked up the nickname of Nacho Libre for quite a while in the SEG unit. So
I would have rather had Nacho Libre than J Lo.
that's good. That's good. So when did you make the connection with Desert Waters?
So Desert Waters was interesting.
And tell us what it is. I guess maybe
Yeah.
it's there.
Okay, so Desert Waters Correctional Outreach, it's a nonprofit where we train correctional staff and other first responders in corrections fatigue, in trauma, in peer support. We actually have a the supportive correctional supervisor course that we teach, where we look at training corrections supervisors and how to really go put wellness first. And so we train staff. We train trainers so that they can train their staff. We will go to departments. We have a safety net accreditation program where we'll look at your accreditation program, or your wellness program, and accreditate it, kind of like the ACA accreditation, where they look at more security and programs. We have a safe haven program where we'll come in and work alongside the department to build up their wellness program to something that's operational and actually works.
When you're accrediting one of those, what are some of the things you're looking for that they have in place?
Well, we look from everything from their policies, ensuring that they have that their employees have access to wellness services, to mental health services. We look at their training because, there's so much that goes into wellness. It's not just, we have an EAP program and we're good. So much of it is even training the staff. Hey, because if we can train the staff, we can prevent so much from happening down the road. I'm sure it's the same when you got in. When I got in, wellness was not a word.
They would show up, and for 10 minutes on annual training, they'd tell you that there's an EAP program. Here's a pamphlet.
Exactly. And my warden actually at the high security place told me that take a shoebox and put your personal life in it, wrap it up tight, and set it outside your car when you get off the exit on the freeway, and leave your personal life in there when you get to work. And then when you leave work, pick up your personal life and put your professional life in there and go home. And that was so, when I was there, it made sense. But in practice, you can't do it.
You can't.
I mean, there's absolutely no way. And it was the worst advice a warden could ever give their staff. But going back to Desert Waters, I mean, we have, so that accreditation, the accreditation program, getting back to it, we have 18 standards that we look at, go through, looking at their program, their policies, their training of staff. And really that's getting off the ground. But I would say our bread and butter, what we're known for is our training. Our From Corrections Fatigue to Fulfillment is kind of the flagship course that people have heard about. And that's From Corrections Fatigue to Fulfillment, looking at corrections fatigue, that cumulative buildup of stress, of work stressors, and what it does to us, and then how we can combat that and be fulfilled, basically. And all of our courses kind of touch a little bit on that course, except I'd say the peer support. That's kind of a standalone, looking at training peer support teams. We also offer, free magazine electronically every month. So
I get that.
The Correctional Oasis, you can go to desertwaters.com and sign up for that. I mail it out the first of the month, or second if it's the first is on a Sunday. And that's just stories from Katerina Spinaris, who's our founder. She's a psychologist. She is an accidental correctional professional, never worked for corrections, but she understands us more than we understand ourselves. It's kind of scary. Smart lady, and she's helped thousands of people. And some of her, she always writes an article or two in there. And then she takes articles from other people, other corrections professionals, people who work for Desert Waters. Sometimes we write stuff too. And she puts together just a great magazine that kind of shows what people are going through, you know.
And we'll put that link in the show notes if anybody wants that. Yep.
Awesome. We also have a Ventline email, ventline@desertwaters.com. And that's exactly what it says. It's a Ventline. You can put on there, because a lot of times, like, I have a problem with going on at work. I don't want to talk to work people about it. Yeah. I don't want to go and do peer support because maybe I don't trust them, or I just don't get along with the peer support team. And so that vent line email is like ability to go in there and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. I don't like it. And every single one of those will get a response. Usually it's from Katerina. She's amazing with words and going to the heart of the problem. And just, it's a good resource. The 24-hour hotline, they used to do a 24-hour hotline, but staffing is just an issue, and as you probably know, organizations love funding inmate run programs.
Yeah.
Staff run programs, it doesn't get the same appeal to it. And so, the funding is very difficult and all of that.
That was one of the reasons that I understood from some people I knew that we went to a national suicide hotline, because some places had good funding and some places the funding would, go in and out. So they wanted some place that people knew was going to be funded.
Yeah.
You talked about peer support several times, and you were on a peer support team. What does a correctional officer need to hear from a peer that they won't accept from a supervisor? Is that part of the?
Well, I mean, I was a supervisor at the time when I was doing peer support, so it was kind of but I took that supervisor role off when I was on the peer support team, or when I was, engaged. Basically, it's just an opportunity to talk. A lot of times we, in California, we started with like a trauma-based peer support. I think it was employee trauma program or something like that, where we would go out and talk after like major incidents. You'd have a riot. Like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's debrief. But what the peer support team really did there was it opened up the door to talk regardless of the issue. So I could talk to somebody that I work with instead of going to, because let's face it, we don't go to mental health professionals. We don't go to counseling. It's a great service. In California, they provided it for us, but we don't take the time, or we think, the stigma of people are going to view me as weak if I do this. And so the peer support team kind of opens it up where I'm talking to people I work with, and we would always talk in a confidential setting. So it wasn't, no one would know. And it was just the ability to talk about issues, either something they're going through at work, or, I talked with people about, they were about to go through a divorce and they were just having trouble, at home. And really what it was I was able to talk to them. They would open up, and then I would provide them resources that were available to them. And so my whole goal was to get them to go to counseling if they needed it, or to get them to, the help they needed. But it was kind of that bridge where it was safe to do. And it really changed the culture from, at first, like, oh, peer support, like, I don't need to talk to my peers, to we would have referrals all the time, or it just became, hey, I'm going to go to Justin's office and sit there and talk to him for a little while. And it wasn't an official peer support, but they knew who I was and that I was safe to talk to.
Yeah. That was,
and I think the cool thing about peer support is, depending on where you work at, there are some really good laws that are getting created that protect the confidentiality of peer support work. I think Washington State has some of the best laws.
okay.
But even in California, like, everything was confidential. We didn't write anyone down. We didn't, like, if we had a meeting, I would say I met for 1 hour, and there would be a little bit more data tracking, but it had nothing to do with what we talked about or who I talked about.
Right.
And, that makes it safe for people to come in and talk about any issue. And unless you're talking about hurting yourself, hurting others, or criminal activity, I'm never bringing it up again.
Yeah.
So
Confidentiality it's got to be the number one, and we haven't always had that. I will tell you without a doubt, the thing that kept me over and over again from ever having anything to do with EAP was because it would end up, you would hear what other people went to EAP, and then it would be out there in the, people talking about it. And if you had any aspirations of being a supervisor, if people were talking about how you couldn't handle home life, when that came up in front of the board, how are they going to look at me? And I know how they looked at me, or other people. So the confidentiality was the one thing I never trusted. Now, that was years ago. And we have gotten better. But I think as supervisor or administrators and supervisors move forward, that's absolutely the thing they need to protect the most.
Yes.
Because without it, it's useless.
It'll tank any wellness program. If you lose confidentiality and things start getting out on the tier that came from, a peer support meeting or even talking to a supervisor, you have that trust and the employee comes to you and says, hey, this is what I'm going through. And then all of a sudden it gets out on the tier, that any wellness program is going to tank after that. It definitely is one of those things that you have to keep.
I'm going to take a look at that Washington and some of their stuff because I'm interested in how they're writing that.
Yeah, they have some good laws, and it's funny because I forget the states, but there's some out there that first responders, as far as like police, EMS, fire, they have some really great laws, and then corrections is excluded from the law, and so it's like. It's a bummer to see, but I think the push is that corrections is getting included in a lot of that.
Yeah. How, in corrections, and this is something I talk about, is the normalization of trauma. And police officers, dispatchers, they do it too. I tell a story, I probably told it on the podcast, where I'm standing there one day after we've had a killing on the floor, and I've got my orderlies out, and they're mopping blood, and it's strung everywhere. And I've been waiting all day to eat. And in my lunchbox is a bologna sandwich. So I step into the office, I grab my bologna sandwich, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm standing there eating it while I'm observing, these guys doing this. And one of my buddies comes off the elevator and he goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "You're standing in blood, up to your shoes, eating a bologna sandwich." He said, "That's not normal." I'm like, "I was hungry," but we normalize that stuff that would freak people out anywhere else.
Yeah.
How much does that come into what you guys talk about and what you do? And
well, I think it's a survival response, and a lot of times I think in the beginning of my career I would look at it as I'm tough because I can go to I remember going to an autopsy when I was at the high security place, and the doctor that does the autopsies, I forget. Yeah, coroner. That's what that guy. But he's eating a jelly-filled, not just a jelly-filled, a red, like a raspberry jelly-filled donut over the body, and I'm just like not over the body because that would contaminate things, but like close enough to where I'm like, but that's the normalization that he has in his job, and we're the same way. I mean, we get to a point where it becomes normal, and then what do? We have that dark humor to make fun of it, or to make jokes, to make light of the situation, because that's how we're going to deal with it, because it's not normal to see some of the things that we see. Katerina Spinaris, my boss, she hates it when I call her my boss, so I'm going to show her the podcast. It says, I call her boss lady sometimes, and she gets so mad at me. She's like, I was never meant to be a boss. But she was telling me a story when I was in training back in 2018 that was when we see a fight inside the prison, no weapons, just a fight. What do we call it? Oh, that was a poo butt fight. That was, whatever. 2 swimmers. Well, she said, now take it back and go to your local grocery store and go to aisle 3 and have 2 guys start fighting in there. And then a 70-year-old woman who's never seen anything in her life walks by that aisle and see those 2 guys fighting. That's the most traumatic thing she's ever seen. And that's going to affect her in a way that it doesn't affect us because we're so numb to trauma. we just look at a fight and like, oh, that's nothing. It's not normal to see violence.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing, working, yeah, we see it all the time of, we try to normalize it. We try to function, and really all it is a way to survive inside the prison.
Yeah. There's a report out there somewhere. I think it says the average human being sees 6 or 7 traumatic events in their entire life, and if you work at a high security prison, you'll see 100 a year, maybe more.
Oh, yeah. I think my first year at the high security prison, I had 100. I was the response supervisor on 125 incidents. Now, some of those were drugs, some were we found a weapon, but a majority of them were violence. And that was just 1 year. So.
Now, you told me you did 17 years, and you kind of talked about, you had your personal struggle in the middle of that. But when in your career did you realize that staff wellness was so important? Did you see it in others? Did you feel it in yourself?
Well, I think, so I go back to how we feel about walking out the gate. So when I was at the maximum security, I really focused on, hey, we hit the gate together. I mean, we walked out as a facility. The camaraderie was really great there. And that, I thought that was staff wellness. I never knew staff wellness. Like I said, that word didn't exist. So to me, that was staff wellness at the time. And so when I went to the lower security prison, it was weird because the camaraderie wasn't there, because you're not going through battle every day.
You don't.
So
it's a whole foxhole thing.
Yeah, and you don't have the buy-in of like, hey, I'm going to walk off the yard with everybody. Actually, as a lieutenant, they were like, hey, it was a big facility, so they would drive us around in golf carts, and my S&E would pick me up early and drive me up to the front for my relief. And so I'd go out the back door in the golf cart and wouldn't even walk out with my staff. And that was just the culture there. And so I think when I finally focused on wellness was when I got into the CF2F class, Corrections Fatigue to Fulfillment. I had never heard of the class. I never heard of wellness. And when I took that class, I realized, wow, a lot of stuff makes sense now. And when I said a lot of stuff made sense, I still was like, but they're not going to buy into it. And then we went and started training it, and it was like, oh, they're buying into it. Like, I like this. And then I could start focusing, on staff wellness a lot more.
So I, doing a little study for this, I ran into a deal, and I noticed that in the same article, I'm just going to throw this at you, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine, but it listed, it talked about wellness programs, and then in like 3 sentences later, it talked about wellness culture. And in my mind, those are two different things. I feel like I came up in the era of wellness programs. Here's this program. You can go over here. You can ask for this, as opposed to, I think there's a lot of places who are building a wellness culture. What does that make sense? What do you think?
No, it does. Well, I think I get what you're saying. And the wellness programs, I totally agree. There's a lot of places that are throwing darts at the board on different programs and hoping it'll work. Or throwing darts at the board saying, hey, at least we're doing something. And something is better than nothing. But culture is such a huge part in making wellness work.
Yes.
I saw at my prison, and I'll give you an example. When we rolled out CF2F, we had probably the best administration we could have for that. They were a little heavy on inmate programming, on rehabilitation programs, which put staff off at first. When you have a warden who says, hey, I think you should create a book program for the inmates, as a lieutenant, it's like, that's not my job.
Right.
But when you have a wellness culture and you're looking at the wellness of all human beings, it changed it, because for the longest time we were looking at the wellness of inmates, right? We were rehabilitating them. And I mean, we put an R in California corrections. It's like, there's an R there now. Like, what does that mean? And so we're focusing on the inmates, and now all of a sudden we have this course where it's like, it's for staff. This is amazing. And it started to change the culture to looking out, not just looking out for everybody, but then also it made almost everybody human in the prison, which is a weird feeling when you don't look at an inmate as an inmate. You look at him as a human,
Okay.
which there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people started buying into doing not just their job, but doing extra stuff. Yeah, maybe I will do a book program. Like, I'm not doing anything at work. Maybe it'll help me out, later. And that the culture at the prison I worked at, we saw our incidents go down, and there was a lot of factors. I mean, we went sensitive needs, which is kind of like protective custody. The gang dropouts and the people who can't walk the main line. So we had a couple yards go sensitive needs. We had the right administration, but our incidents went from 700 a year down to like 150.
Yeah.
To the point where the high security guys like myself were sitting there going, I'm bored out of my mind. Like,
Right.
I'm not working at prison anymore. Like, what's going on? But everyone was doing good. The drama of staff stabbing each other in the back wasn't there. You didn't have supervisors who were cutthroat. You didn't have people, and I'm talking staff, fighting about anything. It was just a nice place to work. And
Cool.
I got to see that. And then the funny thing is we got that new administration I was talking about, and it went from 150 incidents a year, and we started upticking back up to like 500. And again, we had some program changes, which added some of that, but it changed to, instead of focusing on wellness, it changed to focusing on safety and security again. And solely safety and security. And when that happened, the bickering came back, the cutthroat behavior came back, the uses of force went, sky high. And it's like, I could see it, like looking at it now, I can see that the culture and the training worked.
Right.
But so many departments don't see that. You can't read into the future. Yeah. So, how do I put $100,000 into a program? And I just threw that number out there. I made it up. But how do I throw $100,000 into a program and hire new staff and do all of this if I don't know what I'm going to get in return? But that thing they get in return might be a diamond necklace, but they're comfortable with not having it.
Well, for the supervisors and administrators that are listening, it takes, number one, it takes buy-in. Mm-hmm. You have to set the standards. You've got to start building that culture. And it takes work. There's no doubt about it. It's easy to come in on midnight shift and throw down pizzas. That's not wellness. That matter of fact, I've seen that piss off more officers. Because, they don't stay there for it. They throw them down and go, hey, we'll see you later. I'm going home, go to bed.
That was actually my first wellness program in the high security place. Whenever we had a major incident, I would go grab pizzas or burritos.
But were you there?
Oh, yeah.
Were you there?
Oh, yeah.
That's the difference.
And I do remember this one time we had a riot, pretty big riot. It was North and South Hispanics rioting, and 120 staff involved. Uses of force were, I think we had around 200 uses of force between chemicals and 40 millimeters and the Mini 14, all of that. And so, I'm going to get pizza. And I was sick and tired of buying pizza for everybody because we had this was like our fourth riot. And so in like a 4-month period. So I'm my whole overtime check is going to food. So I take, my partners pitch in, I pitch in, my lieutenant pitches in. Well, the captain's there, and I go, hey, Cap, we pitch in every time for food. You haven't been pitching in the last couple times. Would you mind pitching in this time? And he goes, oh, yeah, I got it this time. You got it this time? Yeah, I got it. Okay, so we don't need to? No, I got it. Here's my card. Get it. And I'm like, okay, well, this is 120 staff. I need a lot of
Sure.
pizzas.
Yeah.
I think I hit his credit card for about $300.
Eh,
And when he got that receipt, he was so mad. I'm like, hey, it's for the staff.
that's right.
You can't complain. It's for the
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah. But a lot of times, and one of the things I'll often end the show with is, ask somebody how they're doing and then take a moment to listen.
Exactly.
And that's what I discovered in my career. Now, you can buy the pizzas, you can buy the Subway sandwiches, but if you drop it off and run,
Yeah.
they got nothing out of it. But if you stand there and just have some conversations and let people vent a little bit, or let them just talk, or let them get to know you and you get to know them, that's where the real culture comes from.
Well, how many times do you remember walking by people in the prison and saying, "Hey, how you doing?" And you say it out of courtesy, I guess, or programming, but you're not waiting for a response. You're, "Hey, how you doing?" and you keep walking, you never even hear what they say. If they were to say, because their answer was probably good, but if you said, "Hey, how you doing?" and they said bad, would you have registered that and would you have stopped and talked to them?
I became very intentional as a lieutenant, and we had to make rounds to every unit on our shift.
Yeah.
And you want to get this done. I got so much shit to do. So, that's an hour out of your night. But I got very intentional of forcing myself to stand there for a minute, even if they said good. And I don't watch sports. I'm not a big sports guy. I've never sat on, the couch and watched an entire sports deal. But I started learning about sports, so I'd have something to talk with them about.
Yeah.
Well, how was that game? Or what? I'd get to know their teams, and it just gave us a moment. But I became very intentional about taking 1 minute at each one of those instead of doing what you're saying.
Yeah, and sometimes
it bothered me when other people did it.
Exactly, and sometimes that's what people, you see these people promote, and I think the prison culture, depending on where you're at, it's just, I want to be a sergeant, I want to promote, I want the authority or whatever, but they don't know what goes into it. And so you see these people promote and they don't want to talk to the staff. They want to, do their job, what they think their job is. Well, to promote is to take care of your staff. That's your number one focus, is your subordinates.
Yeah.
It should be. And same thing. There were times I would talk to people and I had no clue about what they were talking about. I had one officer, he was a gamer, and I mean, big gamer. And I would sit there and talk to him for, 10, 15, 20 minutes about gaming. I knew nothing about what he was talking about. I played Xbox and PlayStation before, but it wasn't like I was at his level.
Right.
But he just wanted to talk about that. And so I would sit there and talk about it. And so not only do I need to talk about, some of the things that they want to talk about, but also I have to remember, I have to take the time to say, hey, I talked to this officer about X, Y, and Z last time. So when I go back to him in a week, if I pretend like I never knew that he was a gamer, I would lose all credibility, and which makes it really hard because I don't remember names at all. I have a hard time remembering what I had for dinner last night. So trying to remember, just snippets of what I talked to people about, so that you could build that relationship, and it's not, hey, I'm going to be best friends with you, which I think happens a lot of times where we have that feeling like everyone inside is our friend. My friends I keep separate from work. I had friends on the outside, and then at work were my coworkers, and I kept that very separate. But you can have a personal relationship with somebody and not be best friends with them, and that was one thing I really tried to focus on.
Yeah.
And I think it just made supervision of staff a lot cleaner when I wasn't best friends with a whole bunch of people in there.
There has to be a little bit of a line there. There has to be, because
exactly.
someday you may have to supervise. Yeah. So let me tell me what Desert Waters is doing. What do you guys have coming up? What's
Well, I mean, we don't like to get into specifics of where we're going, but um, we I think this year, each year we have kind of like last year it was like, okay, this is the year of peer support, and it just happened like the first couple contracts we had, it was like they wanted peer support. Places building peer support teams. So we went out and we did a lot of peer support last year. Taught a lot of corrections fatigue to fulfillment like we usually do. Because that's kind of just like I said, the bread and butter course. But then this year, I really think it's the year of the supervisor.
okay?
And I think the role of the supervisor is being seen not only as instrumental in changing culture in building a wellness program, but what's going on nationwide is everyone is short-staffed, right? So if I say, "Hey, Michael, I'm going to train you to train your staff," okay, awesome. So you get it, and you turn around and you can't pull staff off the line because we're so short-staffed that we're running, night operations during the day. It's not beneficial. It's not hitting anybody, And so how do you reach out and get the impact? Well, the impact is if I can get the supervisors to buy into a wellness program, if I can get the supervisors to act like supervisors should be and care about their staff, then now I'm making a change, and I'm not having to pull all my staff off for an 8-hour training. Now I can just rely on my supervisors to do what they're supposed to do and hopefully, create some change.
One of the things I've been talking about in the last year, corrections is so short-staffed, and this is for supervisors out there. Get on Google, search a little bit on micro-training or training bites. We've been trained for so long that you have to go put somebody through a 4 or an 8-hour training. You can sit down on the email once a week, send it out to all the staff on your shift, talk to them about something, and have them respond to you. Takes a few minutes out of your day. It doesn't take everything, but you're building that connection. They're still getting a little bit of training, So I think that's one thing supervisors can do, and they can do it with wellness.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, absolutely.
So what's one thing that you wish the public understood about corrections? What do you think they don't know about us that they need to know about us? And it can be wellness oriented. It can be trauma.
I think we're not bad people.
Yeah.
I so many times, like, I'll go to the grocery store and strike up a conversation with somebody, and they'd be like, "Oh, what do you do?" Or when I was in corrections, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I work in Avenal State Prison or wherever," and they'd be like, "But you're smiling," and it's like, if they knew what we saw on a daily basis, if they knew what we were going through, they might understand the reason why people are frowning, why we might not be, the jovial person that you'd expect to see. I think that's the biggest thing is, you in the media, what do you see? You see you see the deaths, you see the use of the force that weren't compliant. You see, us running into a cell and beating somebody up, what they perceive as that. So to turn that around, seeing the good side.
Yeah.
There really are good staff out there. And unfortunately the media portrays, I don't know the percentage, but I'll make one up. They show 1% of what goes on, if that. But there's some really, really good staff out there. There's some staff out there that are doing amazing things out in the community. Coaching, volunteering. I worked with deacons from churches, and it was like, there are times where I was like, "Wait, you're a deacon? Are you sure?" But the overall, I think, perception of who we are is so jaded compared to, what we're actually doing out there.
when you look around, corrections is full of leaders. You do see them in the church. You see them running Bible study. You see them Mighty Mike coaches and Little League coaches, and we're all over the place out there. That's a very good point. I like that. You mentioned earlier that you have a book that you're working on. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I didn't write it in crayons. That's the good thing. I always joke with my staff, don't write your report in crayons. I came up with a book, and I've always wanted to write a book, and I never had an inspiration for it. My book is covering leadership and wellness, and kind of having, that middle management, first line, second line supervisor, how to be a good supervisor and also keep your staff wellness in mind. It's called A Well-Worn Badge, and it's going to be on desertwaters.com in the near future. I'm putting the finishing touches on it. It's going through final editing right now, and then we're going to get it on there. So if any of your listeners would like to see it, desertwaters.com. We have a couple other books there, but this one's, like I said, it's the year of the supervisor. I had mentioned that, and that's what my focus was in writing this. I wrote it last year, but it seems so much evident now that we need something for the supervisor. And, not just here's your stripes, go do your job, but how to actually be a good supervisor. And so
many of them are coming up and they don't have that depth of experience. So anything that we can get them.
I'm right there. I was 3 years when I promoted, and I was another 3.5 years, 4 years before I promoted to lieutenant. I was under 30 when I promoted to lieutenant, just hit the test right. And so I didn't have that wealth of knowledge, and I learned as I went. And so a lot of the things that I write in the book aren't necessarily what I did. It's the lessons that I learned.
Yeah.
Do as I say, not as I did, because I made my mistakes, and I was fortunate that my mistakes weren't, to where I was getting fired or in trouble or anything. But, and I didn't get anyone hurt, which was always my fear of one of my decisions would get one of my officers hurt. So I never had that, but I made my mistakes, and I own them. And going into the book was really looking at the lessons that I learned, from supervision, and kind of coming up with what the best practice is, what's really going to help, the leaders out there.
So if someone wanted to get a hold of Desert Waters, talk to you guys about training, you have a web address and information?
Yes, www.desertwaters.com. It has all of our information on there. If you want to reach out to us on email, you have questions, this is a really hard email address, justin@desertwaters.com. You can email me, and I will give that to the appropriate people who can answer the question if I can't. We're a small organization. There's 3 of us that are full-time, and then we have some really great master instructors that come from corrections. They speak our language. They walk the line with all of us, and so when we go out and train, they come out and go out there with us. And so when questions come in, we'll find the right person to answer it. It's not, you won't get a canned response if you email us. It's usually very heartfelt, and we'll look at the problem and give you an answer.
Wonderful. I will put all those links in the show notes for anybody that wants them. Hey, Justin, thank you for coming on the Prison Officer Podcast today. I really appreciate it, and very interesting story. I love your career and your process there. So thanks for what you guys do. Thank Katrina for all she's doing, and let me have you on here, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Michael, and it was great to be here.
Excellent. If you enjoy these podcasts, the best way to support the Prisoner Officer Podcast is to share these episodes with your friends or family on social media. Let me invite you to visit www.theprisonofficer.com. If you haven't already, check out the Prison Officer Podcast on Facebook and click that little follow button. Or leave us a message, or better yet, leave us a review. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, Google, or Spotify, please click the subscribe button. Till next time, I'm Mike Cantrell. Watch your back, and please take care of each other out there behind those walls.